Welcome back to another UPCI Music Ministry video. Today we're going to be talking about some wireless microphone information. And one thing I've realized through time, just helping out at churches, is there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of wrong concepts about wireless microphones that I've practiced throughout the years, and I've certainly seen in a lot of churches. And so I wanted to address some of those things today, some sort of best practices and some aspects of how to, first of all, choose the appropriate wireless microphones for your church. And a lot of that should be based upon the number of wireless mics that you're going to use simultaneously, and also looking ahead toward the future, how many you're going to grow into down the line. So you may buy, you may start with just a pulpit mic right now, and then later on you want to get your praise team on all wireless mics. So which wireless series should you choose? Should you mix them? Should you buy one? And so I want to address some of that stuff today. So let's start with talking about brands. And we're going to get into specific models and stuff as well, because I think it's important that we're educated in what's the current offerings. So you can base your decision make the best decision. So the two most popular brands by far in the world are Shure and Sennheiser. They're sort of the de facto standards in the industry. You're going to see them on the global touring world. Those are the two brands you're going to see by far the most, Shure and Sennheiser. Myself, I like both brands, but I'm partial to using Shure, mostly because I think they offer more flexibility in the realm of frequency coordination, especially on their lower end models even as well. And I like the sound of their handheld mics. I personally gravitate towards that. You might have different experience. Like you may say, like, I like Sennheiser E835s better or something. You might like the capsules in the Sennheiser mics better. So I just grew up using Shure mics a lot, and I'm familiar with the sound of an SM58. I'm familiar with the sound of a Beta 58, Beta 87, the KSM9, as well as all their range. So I know what to expect usually with those going in. And I seem to have better results often with some of the mid-price stuff with Shure than Sennheiser as far as being successful with frequency coordination. So that's just my preference. I also use Shure's frequency coordination software called Wireless Workbench. It's right here. And this thing allows you to coordinate and set up all your wireless mics together, including Sennheiser wireless mics, which is, I think, kind of funny. So let's say your church is getting ready to buy some mics, and you want to decide what mic you should buy. Okay, so let's look at some Shure stuff in particular. So the first thing you want to look at is, first of all, your price range and how many wireless mics you're going to use simultaneously. So Shure sells a bunch of different wireless, from entry level to super high-end, pro expensive wireless. And most of the churches that I've worked with are sticking with I would recommend sticking with a few of them that are reasonable, okay? If you're just starting to get in and you have very little budget and you want to get some wireless mics and you just need a few of them only, like maybe like 6 or less, and you're not going to grow further with them, then I would consider these, the Shure BLX system. And they're usually in that $500 range, a little less. This one's $400 for the SM58. And a lot of the variance in price is based upon which capsule you're going to have for the handheld, or what type of lapel or something you're going to use. But the BLX is a good entry-level wireless for churches without spending a ton of money. They're fairly reliable. They make a rack-mountable and non-rack-mountable version. I would recommend the rack-mountable one because you could also do antenna distribution. They have actual, antennas. If you look behind them, you can see the antennas right here attached here. So they also make some of the BLX that are not the same. So here's another version of it. This is the version that does not have the removable antennas, just one built in. So they're a little bit cheaper, but for a little bit extra money, you get a few more features that are more beneficial, I think, worth the extra cost. So let's say you were going to look at this series, the BLX, right? You only needed a few. When you search for BLX, you're going to notice that it's available in 3 options here for the band that you can choose: the H9 band, the H10 band, and the J10. And there may be a couple others that's available in. This is just what Sweetwater is selling, so we're just looking at their website just for curiosity's sake. So you can see next to that it says 512 to 542 megahertz and so on, 542 to 572, and 584 to 608 megahertz. This is, when you purchase the mic, it comes in a specific frequency range that you can choose from. So that means that you can tune that microphone, if you bought the H9 band, to anywhere in from 512 to 542 megahertz. So why are there those options, and which one should you choose? So that's what we're going to try to define today. So let's look at what band would be best. And a lot of that is based upon your geographical location, where you live in the United States or where you live in the world is going to define which one would be best to purchase. So Shure has on their website something called the Frequency Finder. And if you just Googled Shure Wireless Frequency Finder, you'll be able to pull this up. And it's kind of a utility that they have on their site. Very useful. You type in your location. So I'll type in our zip code here in Indianapolis, where we're at. And I'm going to choose the Shure BLX series. And I'm going to hit search here. And I hit search. Oh, it's already pulled up. I already searched it earlier because I was curious. And I have a few choices here. I have the J10 band, the H10 band, and the H9 band. And then it shows me some of the discontinued bands as well. So, for example, if I'm pulling up the J10 band, which is 584 to 608, I can do in that area, in that neighborhood, in my zip code, I can do up to this many wireless mics, 12 maximum, and there's 4 that are actually reserved for wireless mics. And then if I chose the H9 band, I can get up to 9, and H10 band up to 9, H9 band up to 7. Now, these are theoretical numbers according to what Shure says, and how does Shure know that you can get 9, or how does Shure know you can get 7? And what they do is they take into account TV stations and other broadcasts in the area. So if you go to the bottom, you can see actually it tells you the available TV channels in your area. And if you click, you can see the frequencies that are available. And then it also shows you unavailable channels. And these are where TV stations are broadcasting. So, well, TV stations, what does that mean? Why does TV stations interfere with my wireless mic? And so most wireless mics that you're going to purchase today are going to operate in something called the UHF band. And the UHF band is the same frequency band that TV stations broadcast in. And those are your biggest sort of, the biggest culprits or biggest things to work around is TV stations, because it's illegal to broadcast over something that somebody has a license for. So you can't broadcast over WFYI, which is 16 miles away. I can't use channel 21 because they're using it, they're licensed to use it. It would be against the law for me to try to broadcast there if they're occupying that space. At the same time, sometimes you're in a remote area far from the station enough, and in a steel building where you're not picking up any of that channel, and it's very weak, the signal, and sometimes you can get away with broadcasting over some of that, but generally you're supposed to avoid it for the most part. Okay, so that's how you choose some of the frequencies. I will give a word of advice about this. As far as which one would I choose, a lot of times what people try to avoid purchasing is the higher up bands that are operating close to 600 megahertz, because the FCC has auctioned off upper 600 megahertz to the new cell phone stuff, like the 5G cell phone stuff that's coming out. They just auctioned that off a few years ago, and they've sold upper 600 megahertz bands to the cell phone companies. Now, looking at it long term, if they decide to come out with the next 6G or something, and they try to occupy more of the space, they're probably going to take the lower 600s and the upper 500 megahertz band next. So a lot of people are suggesting that you avoid the higher higher 5s and lower 6s megahertz. So if that's the case, you want to choose H10 or H9 band. So you could see you can't get a ton of mics out of that band, out of those two bands. So what if your church has 9 wireless mics plus a pulpit mic plus a worship leader mic, plus you want to do in-ears and stuff? Then definitely I would say avoid the BLX. Avoid probably the BLX series. You're probably going to need to spend more money. Kind of the catch-22 or the caveat about wireless microphones is that the more channels that you need, the more you have to spend per channel. So it's an unfortunate reality, but it's the reality of what we're working with. The cheaper stuff is good if you need only a few. If you need a lot, you got to spend more money. So what's the next step up besides something like BLX? BLX broadcasts analog audio. It's not a digital broadcast. So now a lot of churches are saying, well, we want to get digital mics, next. So yes, there's plenty of advantages to digital broadcast. And in particular, we're going to get to discussing the pluses and minuses to some of the digital stuff out there. So let's look at one more series that would be a good step up from this. So we talked about BLX. Let's look at another series. So then one of the next step ups from there is the Shure QLXD. Okay. So instead of spending around $400 or $500 a channel, you're spending about double that per channel. So these are available in components or full series, So for example, here's one with an SM58 on it. So the other one was about $400. This is about $1,000 a channel. Significantly more money, also available in several bands. But let's just quickly look to Shure's frequency finder and choose now the same zip code, but choose the PSM, I'm sorry, not PSM, but the QLXD. So you saw how we were looking at 9 max, 7 max mics in that band at our zip code. Let's search with QLXD and see how many that changes to real fast. So if my internet actually is fast enough. Shure just recently updated their site, so their wireless frequency finder has been very slow lately. So now we're looking at it. Here it is, Shure QLXD. J50 band, 75 mics max. H50, 41 max. G50, 32 max. So plenty of wireless channels available, many times more than using something like BLX. So this leaves you extra room to grow into. Not just extra room to grow into to say that we're going to buy 30 mics, but more options. If you do get interference, you have more choices to find new frequencies using their frequency finder. So that's some of the advantage of stepping up into the higher up wireless microphones is you get much more frequency agility, the ability to choose many more frequencies. Another advantage of spending extra money and getting something like the QLXD versus the cheaper stuff is you're also going to get higher audio quality. The audio quality of the QLXD is, to me, it's superbly better than any of the analog wireless stuff. This broadcasts sound digitally. It's just way better sounding. It's closer to the sound of a wired microphone, which really sounds the best. Any wired microphone is going to always sound better than any wireless mic. You could spend $5,000 on a channel for a wireless SM58, but you plug in an XLR cable out of a $100 SM58, and it's going to sound better than any wireless version. So, well, one of the big reasons that churches go to wireless is aesthetics, right? Convenience of having the aesthetics of not having wires. So, in the next video, we'll talk more about some of the other advantages and disadvantages and best practices with using some of this stuff, and also how to set up some of the frequencies when, or selecting frequencies in a very easy way that'll guarantee success. So we'll see you in a little while.